Welcome, and thank you for joining the very first session of our Interstellar Insights series inspired by my new book, What Space Got to Do with It? An Interstellar Guide to Success. This book is the next step in a larger journey, moving from awakening potential in my first book to now activating it. Grounded in over 35 years of experience in the global space ecosystem and enriched by insights from more than 200 global thought leaders, this guide translates space-based principles into practical strategies for real-world leadership. It's built on 4 pillars: leadership, awareness, access, and action. The book offers a roadmap for anyone looking to lead with clarity and purpose, whether in policy, entrepreneurship, education, or innovation. Today's conversation focuses on the first and most foundational pillar, leadership, specifically the kind that begins from within. Leadership isn't about titles, it's a decision to take ownership of your vision, values, and voice, and to lead yourself first before leading others. To explore this theme, I'm deeply honored to be joined by 2 visionary changemakers featured in Chapter 1. His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Al-Aseeri and Professor Simonetta de Pippo. Their journeys offer bold insights and personal reflections on what it means to lead with courage, clarity, and commitment on a global scale. I hope today's dialogue inspires you to not only reflect on your own leadership path, but to take action, to launch forward with intention and create lasting impact from the inside out. First, we're honored to welcome His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Al-Aseeri. He's the CEO of the Bahrain Space Agency and a powerful advocate for space innovation, national development, and educational opportunity. His leadership has not only helped shape Bahrain's space ambitions, it's also helped empower a new generation of thinkers and change makers across the region. Thank you, Dr. Mohamed, for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Shelli, for this invitation. And it is really an honor to join you and Professor De Pippo in this webinar.
Thank you. And as you said, also joining us is Professor Simonetta de Pippo, a pioneer in global space diplomacy and leadership. She's the founding director of the Space Economy Evolution Lab at Bocconi University, a former director of the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, visiting professor at NYU Abu Dhabi, and more recently, co-founder and president of Inspire for Tomorrow Foundation. She's also a longtime champion for international cooperation in space. Her leadership journey spans across science, governance, sustainability, and continues to shape how we think about space and humanity's shared future. Welcome, Professor Simonetta.
Thank you very much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be with you in this interesting journey. So let's go ahead.
Thank you. Well, thank you. And before we dive into today's theme, I'd love for each of you to share a brief reflection on your leadership journey. What were some of the pivotal moments or turning points that shaped your path, and how did self-leadership play a role in helping you move forward? Dr. Mohamed, if we could start with you.
For sure, it is a pleasure to share with you some of my background. Actually, my leadership journey began not in a boardroom, but in a University of Bahrain classroom, where I discovered that education is a catalyst for national transformation. With advanced degrees in reactor design from University of Florida, bioreactor design from the University of Manchester, the academic practice credentials from York St. John's University, I returned to Bahrain, driven by one mission: to bridge academic excellence with tangible national progress. This faith drove me through pivotal roles, securing, this is just an example, securing ABET accreditation for engineering programs during my tenure as assistant professor at the University of Bahrain, where my real career journey started. Architecturing Bahrain's fairest regulatory framework for private universities as director of accreditation and licensing at the Higher Education Council, modernizing technical education at the Ministry of Education as a director for technical and vocational schools, and steering Bahrain Polytechnic through institutional transformation and reforming, restoring integrity through transparency and accountability. Today, as a CEO of the Bahrain Space Agency and board trustees of Dirasat, which is one of the famous Arabian Gulf think tanks, I leverage my advisory roles across national and regional committees to advance Bahrain's scientific and geopolitical interest. My work remains anchored to a singular commitment, transforming vision into legacy through strategic collaboration with decision makers throughout the government of Bahrain.
Well, thank you so much for that wonderful insight on your journey. Professor Simonetta, we'd love to hear a little bit more insight about your journey.
Well, it's simple in a nutshell, is the fact that since when I started to look at my education, I wanted to do something in my life, allowing me to learn every day, to be always at the frontier of innovation and the future, to look at the future as something positive, because the more we discover, the more we advance as humanity. So I found myself, I would say naturally, in astrophysics at the university. So it was purely a scientific approach. And this was already something in the right direction. And then I had the opportunity and the privilege to join the Italian Space Agency at the very moment in which the activities of the agency started. So in a way, I was in the group of a small group of pioneers who created the agency, because I joined this small group of people just a couple of years before the agency was really created. And then my first job was to look around in the world, travel, and meet other people in Japan, in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, you name the countries that at that time were already well developed in the field. And I started to build projects in cooperation with these countries, you know? So what happened was that at a certain point in time in my life, I found myself with the same, I was growing in my career, because then I joined the European Space Agency as the director of human space flight. And then I spent a couple of years in Brussels. And then I became, in March 2014, the director of the Office for Outer Space Affairs at the UN. Well, while I was growing in my career, all these very, very young at that time friends in Japan, in Canada, in the United States, in Europe, blah, 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 they became the head of the agency, the president of this company, the CEO of the other company, or the CEO of an important foundation. So at the very end, even today, but already a few years ago, I had a lot of friends, top level, because we have been growing together. And this is another side of it. So the spirit for cooperation that always I've been embracing as part of my approach. So a certain point in time, what I wanted to do was to contribute to have, both. So on one side, I wanted to get a personal reward on what I was doing, but at the same time, I wanted to do something that was useful for the community. So, and the reward for me was the combination of the two. So, to be very honest, I've been doing what I wanted to do, working hard, to be very honest, sometimes 24/7, but very rewarding. And I feel privileged, because after 40 years in this field, I'm still doing what I'm passionate for. So what else?
That's fantastic. Thank you both for sharing that. And chapter 9 talks about networking, but I have to highlight that your network is your net worth. And so I think you've highlighted that very well, Professor Simonetta, with building those relationships early in your career. And we'll save that topic for chapter 9, where we talk about the importance of networking. In the book, We explore how real leadership begins by aligning with your mission and leadership yourself before leading others. I think, Simonetta, you kind of shared that. You've been doing what you're passionate about. You were able to align those together. Let's start with you, Professor Simonetta. Can you share how self-leadership has shaped your career and helped guide your decision, especially during moments of challenge or change? There's been a lot of change.
Well, also what I've been doing was also to look at diversity as an asset. So not only in terms of gender representation, but in general. So that's the reason why I have a very broad network in more or less all the countries in the world, which is also quite fascinating. And the reason is that I do believe that putting together different ideas, different perspectives, different ages, different genders, is really helpful in finding the best solution for whatever type of problem you may have on the table. And to be very honest, the other point is that you need to learn how to negotiate if you want to really build important international programs, which is at the basis of what we call space diplomacy, right? So the point is that you need to feel yourself into the shoes of your counterpart. So you need to learn your counterpart, their culture, their approach to life, their professional approach, the way in which they want to solve their own problems. Because at the very end, if you have to find a compromise or the best compromise possible, well, you need to understand not only your requirements, but also the requirements of your counterpart. And that's the moment, and probably is because I started with this, traveling the world where I was very young in order to bring new projects to the Italian Space Agency. Well, I learned how to learn the approach of other cultures, the way in which other people in different parts of the world are dealing with the same type of issues. So this was really the point where I understood that I had the responsibility of being, supportive and leverage on a way on this capability and this ability I got to leverage on this and trying to help the world to become a better world. And so, in reality, as I was mentioning before, is a combination of personal reward and the community reward. And so I started, at national level with the Italian Space Agency. Then I moved to regional level with the European Space Agency. And then I went to the maximum level, which is global. I'm still not going, to the moon or Mars, but, you never know in the near future. So the point is that when I naturally arrived at the UN, I was already with the right mindset. So it was really a pleasure for me to work in that environment, enlarging even more my possibility to support, in particular, developing and emerging countries, and also people really diverse in the various configurations. I always say that. Most of the countries which join, most of the Middle East countries which joined the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, including Bahrain, was during my tenure. So I was able to move from 76 to more than 100 member states, so more than 30% increase in just few years, just because space was becoming more important, that's for sure. So that's the reason why also countries wanted to join. But also the fact that I was really pushing for this, for countries embracing the concept of being in a big family and trying to do the best all together.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, Dr. Mohamed, I'd love to ask you the same thing. Can you share how your self-leadership has shaped your career and helped guide your decisions, especially during moments of challenge or change?
Sure, I will do so, but I would like to reflect also on what Professor Pippo just mentioned. I remember the first time we met together in Abu Dhabi in a meeting for the GCC space leaders with the UNOOSA, and because of her style of leadership, she managed to convince all of us to be members in the UNOOSA and even to the COBUS. So her style of leadership is really a unique one, full of trust and transparency and building strong network, bringing you into the family of space. Back to your question, Doctor, if you allow me. So from my point of view, self-leadership meant always owning my mission before I had a title. For example, when I had been asked by the leadership of Bahrain to establish the Bahrain Space Agency, to be honest, I had no space background at all, but I had clarity. And that clarity, I can say it is very simple statement that I believed in it. It is about Bahrain and Bahrain youth. I believe that they deserve a place in the cosmos, as we said. That purpose guided every decision from drafting our first strategy to partnering with leading space agencies as well as with our neighbor countries' space agencies. Through each transition from academia to policymaking to space, self-leadership started with aligning my action to a purpose beyond position. It meant leading with a faith when paths were uncharted and investing in those who will outlive our work. Today, at Bahrain Space Agency, we measure success not by number of satellites or payloads launched into space, but by leaders raised and their achievement. Like the young Bahraini engineers and scientists, we are honored to have them at Bahrain Space Agency, those young leaders who gained global respect through their achievements with more than 21 international awards and currently up to 3 key positions in less than 5 years. Their stories shape our core belief when we invest in people, we build ecosystem that can be sustainable system and save our nations. And I believe you met with one of our young leaders, space engineer Aisha Al-Haram, and she can be one of our role model in the space sector, not only for young Bahrain, but also for Arab women in space. And I am so proud of her success in this field.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of meeting her at multiple events, and it was a pleasure to include her also, her comments about you in chapter 1 about how your mentorship and your guidance has helped elevate her career. And now she's paying it forward by being a mentor to others. So thank you for your leadership and helping to create the next generation of leaders. As we pivot to question 2, we're going to focus on turning reflections into momentum. So, chapter 1 emphasizes using tools like value alignment and personal SWOT, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat analysis, to turn inward reflections into outward actions. What tools or strategies have helped you stay aligned with your purpose, and how have you turned insight into momentum? Dr. Mohamed, we'll start with you.
Okay. At the early stages, with a background in engineering, SWOT analysis is always the first tools to be used. However, I used it in my personal assessment several times, especially after changing my career from the academia to working for the government as a policymaker. And then I used it again when I was appointed as the CEO for the Bahrain Space Agency. I remember at that time I was asking myself, what is my strength, and what is the threat that I'm facing. And to be honest, I still remember that my major threat was at that time that Bahrain, the limited space ecosystem. So starting from there, I consider those results from using this tool, the SWOT analysis tool, was very helpful for me to identify areas and gaps that I should fill and focus on. For example, I built on that by keeping in mind the vision, the royal vision for the space sector in Bahrain. And then I started to work to create opportunities. For example, I work to launch a training program with leading space agencies, companies, universities, and also I work very closely with the UNOOSA in order to learn from their expertise. Then we try to work very closely with the young Bahraini engineers and scientists, and we encourage them to join us because at the beginning there was like they were really threatened of joining this agency, young agency, with really no heritage at all. Then the tool analysis, the tool of the SWOT analysis help in spot the gap, as I said before, and become like the best way forward based on the result, or the result I gained from the SWOT analysis was the best way I invest in it in order to move forward with our work in the agency. Between time to time, also, I revisit my values, and I always keep asking a general question: does the decision that I am taking empower the next generation? If yes, I will proceed. If not, then I will start thinking about changing the decision or modifying the decision to fit the purpose. Another tool I use also is the brainstorming through open discussion with my team. It can generate many ideas and identify gaps on a wider scale. I personally now, after this maybe a number of years of experience, I prefer this tool over the SWOT analysis because it is the best way to share knowledge and experience with the team and prepare my team to be the next leaders for the agency or for any other institutes.
Thank you so much for that. Professor Simonetta, I'll ask you the same question. What tools or strategies have helped you stay aligned with your purpose, and how have you turned insight into momentum?
Well, that's an interesting question because in all the various organizations I've been dealing with, I've been working for, there is this habit of allowing you to go through leadership courses or things like that. And there was one, I have to say, that was particularly interesting. It was at MIT Media Lab a few years ago, and it was mainly on open leadership. So how to maintain, let's say, good leadership and good leadership habits in a world that is really becoming open and open, right? And it was very interesting because I was the only non-American. It happens to me quite often, I have to say, to be the only known something, which is fine. And it was interesting because it is an example because we went to do a sort of after the course, so for let's say dinner time, still part of the course, we went in a place where they were dividing us in groups, and we had to cook dinner. Now, they forgot I was Italian, probably, because they put me in the group where I had to do the pasta, but physically do the pasta. So I was the only one able to do the pasta in all the team, including the teachers, right? Because clearly, it's something that we learn when we are very, very, young. Now, why am I making this as an anecdote? Because in reality, you never know which type of source can be very helpful for you to learn something. And this is quite a good lesson because, sometimes I hear colleagues saying, I'm going to this meeting or to this reception because I'm sure I'll meet this and that. That's not the right approach. You have to go somewhere because it's part of your job, because it's part of the networking process, because it's part of a learning process that is always helpful, because you never know what you can learn. And so this has been the spirit of what I've been doing, always very open-minded and trying to get the maximum I can. So this means that I didn't have any mentor or someone who I was following, but I was really grasping the main points that were fitting very well with my approach here and there during my entire career. So I'm learning even today from colleagues or from other people. And this is extremely interesting. So I believe that a combination of soft and hard skills is the right way for the success. So for success in life and from a professional standpoint, you really need to have a combination of all these elements. And each of us has its own recipe in a way. If you want a recipe for pasta, I'm here.
We'll be right over. Well, our next question focuses on rising beyond roadblocks. This happens to all of us in our careers. And each of you has navigated complex systems and, in some cases, created entirely new paths. What advice would you give to others who face closed doors, gatekeeping, or are unsure where to begin leading from where they're at? So, Professor Simonetta, we'll start with you on your thoughts.
Well, first of all, I believe that it's impossible for each and every one of us to have a real clean path with no showstoppers or no roadblocks, right? It's more or less impossible. And sometimes it's not depending, I mean, most of the times it's not depending on your abilities, but it depends on the combination of elements that you have to face. So I believe that when you have an issue in front of you, a problem to solve, you have to look at it as an opportunity, as a challenge that you have to overcome, because that's the only, let's say, way for you to learn from the process. Because if you say, okay, this is impossible for me to overcome, or you try to bypass the problem and you don't solve the problem, it will stay there forever. So you have to solve the problem in different manners. It depends on the problem you have in front of you. And sometimes if you have a period in your life where you have to wait for your next opportunity, well, it's the right moment to reflect upon yourself, trying to learn a little bit, trying to also change in few ways of doing that you have been, collecting in your life that may need to be changed. So it's sort of, desert and really, I like the deserts. Yeah, it's a place where I really can, rejoin myself. And so that's the reason why I use this metaphor. So going through the desert helps you to understand the nature, silence. You have to do things with yourself and trying to improve yourself. And the desert is a very good representation of that. So you cross the desert and you arrive on the other side as a better person.
Well, fantastic. Well, I look forward to hearing Dr. Mohamed's thoughts on that same question. What advice would you give to others who face closed doors, gatekeeping, or unsure where to begin leading from where they are?
Actually, I always advise my team here, whenever they facing closed doors, I advocate a dual approach. First of all, keep knocking the door. Try to enter. But at the same time, don't wait for any answer and don't expect anybody behind the door will help you or even to open the door in the first instance. Try to build a new pathway. For example, I will consider Bahrain Space Agency as an example. As I stated earlier, the Bahrain Space journey started with no existing infrastructure. However, we tried to construct our own ecosystem. When youth lacked access to the space and to space technology, we launched what we know today as Bahrain Space Team program. And also we work very closely through our strong network with our neighbors as well as with the international agencies to establish a collaboration platforms such as the Arab Space Collaboration Group, creating regional platform for knowledge exchange, joint project, and shared resources as well. When we faced a problem with the budget, there was a budget constraints at the beginning. We prioritized high impact, cost efficient solutions, leveraging international training programs and cost free joint projects. One of them under the umbrella of the UNOOSA, embedding space literacy in national education to align with the SDGs, positioning space as a public priority to drive institutional support. My actionable advice for any new leaders in any field: start where you stand. Lead one achievable project to build credibility. Try to mentor even one person. Their growth will expand your legacy. Try to identify strategic opportunities to demonstrate value, and try to have small wins, which will build unstoppable traction. And I always advise my team, remember that every leader on today's global stage began by raising their hand before being called. Don't wait for your invitation, create your own platform.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's wonderful. We're going to cross the desert and we're going to start with small steps and we're going to raise our hand. I think those are wonderful takeaways. Our next question is about modeling leadership through mentorship and legacy. Now, the book emphasizes that one of the most powerful ways to lead is to uplift others. How have mentorship, knowledge sharing, or legacy building shaped your leadership journey? And why is this such a critical part of your leading yourself? And Dr. Mohamed, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is a very, very interesting point. And I will take this opportunity to say that I'm so thankful to all my mentors who helped and share their knowledge and experience with me through my journey. They instilled in me the true values of leadership and how to be a good leader. However, in my opinion, true leaders build ladders, not monuments. For instance, at Bahrain Space Agency, we mandate every senior leader or senior engineers, but I will call them senior leader here, to mentor the young professionals under their supervision. Why is that? Because mentors or mentoring others can create a chain reaction of impact. When you uplift others, you enhance your leadership skills and scale your legacy exponentially. My proudest achievement is not a policy. It is seeing our young engineers and scientists in Bahrain leads missions, startups, and institutions. That is how we ensure Bahrain space ecosystem thrives for decades. Why is this self-leadership important? Because upholding others' demands requires rigorous self-accountability.
Fantastic. Thank you. Professor Simonetta, same question to you. How have your mentorship, knowledge sharing, or legacy building shaped your leadership journey? And why is this such a critical part of leading yourself?
Well, in reality, as I said before, there is no clear, let's say, someone that I can recognize as a mentor. But as I said, I was trying to capture positive elements, at least positive to me, which helped building myself and my way of doing. Now, one of the things that I believe may be important to transfer this leadership approach that I believe is quite successful in a way, it's a natural way of leading, is the fact that we need to focus on the why we do what we do. Because in a way, in our field, which is a field of a lot of new technologies, quite high level of innovation in the speed of innovation, quite interesting. In reality, what you have to do is to, how can I say, is to focus on the fact that you're doing something very important for yourself and for humanity. So you have a sense of purpose of what you're doing. So the team that you build needs to have the same approach. Otherwise, you will always have someone who is not on the same page and is not following. And even if you do whatever you can in order to bring him or her on the same boat, well, if he or she doesn't have the same type of mindset, well, you will never bring them on board. Yes, they still will do their job properly, even quite with a high level expertise, but they're not really contributing to the goal that you have, which is improving the quality of life of all of us on the surface of this planet in trying to build a better world, in particular for a very strong socioeconomic sustainable development. So that's the real meaning. Whatever we do and whatever we transfer to our team is the importance of why we do what we do. I believe this has been my, let's say, the fil rouge of my life. And the team that is following, certain projects or activities in the various offices and institutions I've been working for. Well, you always have someone who is not on the same boat, but the more you are able to bring people in the boat towards the better future, the better is. So I've been doing quite a good job, I have to say, until now. Clearly, there is always, as I said, someone not ready to do it, but it's really rewarding. Also, the fact that you are a team working for the same goal and for the same, let's say, bringing benefits to humanity is always something rewarding.
Absolutely. And not only do you have to get them in the boat, but then you got to get them all rowing together. That's the other thing. Some people
Exactly.
are rowing different or backwards. So there's always another paradigm to leadership. So let's get them in the
Absolutely.
boat and then we got to get them rowing together. I love it. As we pivot to the next question, which is about taking initiative before you're ready, one powerful insight in the chapter one is that leadership doesn't wait. It's a decision, often made before we feel fully prepared. Can you share a moment when you stepped forward before you felt ready and what that taught you about leading from within? Professor Simonetta, we'll start with you.
Well, to be very honest, I have a strange mechanism in mind that as I'm not controlling, so it's not a merit, it's something that I have naturally. And the point is that I know exactly when I have to act. Don't ask me why, but that's what happens. And sometimes when I am waiting for doing an action that I know I have to do, but I'm not fully convinced, then I wait and then I wait and no one understands. And then either the problem is solved naturally or something is intervening that shows that intervening from my side, I mean, doing something from my side was not correct. Now, as I said, it's not a merit. It's something that probably I learned in my long career. Um, there are a couple of situations in which I took action without having all the elements in my hands. But I did it with sometimes you have to manage between risk avoidance and risk management. Well, I decided for risk management, very, assertive. And I was lucky enough to get the right response in the positive outcome. Um, Usually, as I said, I put all together in a I let's say I do a sort of a cocktail of all the information I have and take the decision accordingly. And the point is also that you have not only to consider, the evidence, I mean, the elements which are so evident for everyone, but you have to look at the nuances, at the political sensitiveness, at all the small details which give you the understanding, the precise, on the precise moment in which you have to give the go ahead. And it works.
Fantastic. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Mohamed, the same question. Can you share a moment when you stepped forward before you felt ready and what that taught you about leading from within?
Actually, when I was tasked with the position of CEO for Bahrain Space Agency, I felt wholly unprepared. But I asked myself, if not me, who? If not now, when? We launched with only 3 staff members, a board office, and a budget far below expectation. What I learned from that readiness is not a must for success. So I started before being really qualified for this position. I learned while leading, and I trust that purpose attracts allies. For example, a lot of space agencies such as NASA, ESA, UK Space Agency, ISRO, UAE Space Agency, JAXA, and other Arab space agency as well joined because they believed in the mission we dared to start. So this is what I learned from being appointed without even my being asked or to be ready, and the result was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this has been an incredible discussion, and I can't believe that we're already coming to an end. So, as we think about closing insights, in just a sentence or two, what is one powerful habit, mindset, or lesson you would like to offer to someone who's ready to lead themselves but just needs a spark to begin? Professor Mohamed, I'll start with you.
Usually, when I receive my staff member who are always complaining about some challenges, I always ask them, please replace can I with how will I? When I faced doubters asking, can Bahrain really build a space agency? We shifted the question, how will we do it? This is how we started. That tiny reframe sparks action. And my advice, start today, identify one barrier you have overthought about, and then ask, how will I navigate it? Then take the very next step.
Fantastic. Professor Simonetta, I'll ask you the same thing in just a sentence or two. What is one powerful habit, mindset, or lesson you'd like to offer someone who's ready to lead themselves but just needs a spark to begin?
Well, I have to say there are few famous quotes that I've been always keeping in mind. So, and let me select 3 of them. One is from Mahatma Gandhi, who said that you need to be the change you want to see, which is quite powerful because it means that you don't have to wait for someone else to do something for you, but you have to contribute yourself for a better future, which is something that I've always done. The second one is more from the management standpoint. So, and I always say also to my students, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And then I add with flexibility, because it's always impossible not to have flexibility, in particular when you have difficult situations, for example, with astronauts on the space station or things like that. And being, I've been the director of human space flight, so I had astronauts on the space station several times to manage. So it was interesting. And the last one, not the last one, is from Nelson Mandela, which is my, let's say, the preferred one, which is, it's always seems impossible until it's done. So it always seems impossible until it's done. It means that you have to try. Every time you have a difficult problem or issue in front of you, with the understanding and with the mindset, you can make it. And only when it's done, then it's done. Or, I mean, until the situation is not over, you cannot say that it's over. So that's the way in which you can overcome issues and try to bring, again, everyone on the same page and trying to do something good for the future.
Fantastic. What a perfect way to close this incredible first webinar for the book launch. Thank you so much for kicking off the Interstellar Insights webinar series. Today, we've explored what it truly means to lead yourself first, a message that echoes through every page of What Space Got to Do with It, an Interstellar Guide to Success. Dr. Aseeri and Professor Pippo, they reminded us that leadership isn't about titles or permission. It's about clarity, courage, and commitment. And their story showed us how self-leadership becomes the launch pad for global impact and how bold choices taken from within can shape industries, institutions, and futures. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for the support. Bye-bye.
So as we reflect on today's discussion, several powerful themes emerged. These were lessons that aren't just relevant to our featured leaders, but to each of us, wherever we are on our journey. We're reminded that self-leadership is the foundation of all leadership. Before we can lead others, we must lead ourselves with clarity, conviction, and purpose. It starts with knowing who we are, what we value, and where we want to go. We saw how strategic reflections can become a source of momentum. Tools like a personal SWOT analysis or aligning with core values aren't just introspective, they're transformative. They help us make better decisions and take bolder steps forward. Our guests also showed us that setbacks can become springboards. Challenges, rejections, and resignations aren't roadblocks. They're often invitations to grow, to innovate, and to lead with even greater impact. We talked about the true leadership multipliers. It's not just about personal success, but also about uplifting others. Mentorship, legacy building, and investing in the next generation are all ways we extend our influence beyond ourselves. And perhaps most importantly, we were reminded that you don't need to feel ready to begin. Every leader we heard from today started before they had all the answers. They made a choice to act, to lead, to trust themselves, and that choice changed everything. These are not just lessons for space leaders or CEOs or diplomats. These are lessons for all of us. And the best part, you can start applying them today. As you leave this session, I encourage you to choose one insight that resonates most and put it into practice this week. Maybe it's revisiting your values, mentoring someone in your orbit, or simply taking that step you've been waiting to feel ready for. And if today's conversation sparks ideas or questions, keep the momentum going. I invite you to explore the full chapter and the full book, What Space Got to Do with It, an Interstellar Guide to Success, which will be available on Amazon. This is just the beginning of our Interstellar Insights journey. Over the coming weeks and sessions, we'll dive deeper into the other three foundational pillars of the book: awareness, action, and access. I hope you'll join us as we continue to chart this course together, one insight, one decision, one launch at a time. Until next time, I'm Shelli Brunswick, and I look forward to seeing you around the galaxy.